Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Writers Chat, where we gather together to talk about all things writerly. I'm Johnny Alexander, and I'm joined today by Melissa Stroh and Norma Poor. And Norma is going to introduce our most fabulous guest today.
We are so excited to have Dr. Saundra Dalton-Smith with us today. And we're going to talk about unlock the art of self-promotion and learn how to evaluate your author brand in today's competitive book market. Dr. Saundra Dalton-Smith is an award-winning author and speaker. She spent over 20 years in clinical practice as an internal medicine physician before she transferred into a career that allows her to indulge in her love of books. She is the author of Set Free to Live, Breaking Through the 7 Lies Women Tell Themselves, Come Empty, Pour Out Life's Hurts, and Receive God's healing love. And that one was the winner of the 2016 Golden Scroll Nonfiction Book of the Year and 2016 Illumination Award Gold medalist. Another book of hers is Colorful Connections, 12 Questions About Race That Open Healthy Conversations. And her bestseller, Sacred Rest, Recover Your Life, Renew Your Energy, Restore Your Sanity, 2019 Gold winner of the Christian Author Network and Crown Award in Outstanding Broadcast Media. Saundra has spoken in numerous Christian writers' conferences, teaching authors how to effectively launch their books, improve their author platform, and secure their own media placements, including She Speaks, Speak Up Conference, Blue Ridge Christian Writers Conference, and She Writes for Him Conference. She leads a Christian author mentor mastermind group and has coached both fiction and nonfiction authors. She loves helping. Well, Saundra, we are so glad you are here, and I'm going to pass it off to you. We just can't wait to hear what you have for us.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation. It is my pleasure to be able to share with you. This is one of those topics where I'm always praying that God will give an opportunity to have this discussion, because I feel like there's such a need for Christian authors to be out there in the forefront of media. People are desperate for knowledge. They are desperate for truth. And so they're searching for all these places, and there's so many voices that we need the voice of God, the voice that has been placed inside of his people, to come to the forefront to answer some of those questions. And so what we're going to talk about how do you build your platform in a way that allows you to reach more people with less effort. I love social media. Think it's fantastic. Want you to do it. But the thing that I want you to focus on during our time together is how do we use dedicated earned media, not ads, not where you're having to pay somebody to put together something that you're going to put on Facebook and have them run it for so many dollars, per click. Nothing like that. How do you get into podcasts? How do you get into newspapers? How do you get on TV and allow yourself to be able to share God's truth with a broader audience? That is the simplest way to build a platform. So we're going to discuss first, how do you begin to even pitch the media? What's the process? What are they looking for? What are the things that need to be in place on your website, even within just how you discuss the work that you do, so that they know when to call you, so that they know when you're the right person to share about a topic. And then we're going to transition over into a topic that I'm passionate about. If you've ever heard me talk at any writers conference, and that is, how do we take that audience from that major platform and bring them over into your platform? How do we build off of that exposure? So I want us to begin by just kind of having a quick overview of why am I even qualified to have this conversation. Well, I booked myself in, at the time, this is an older slide, as you can see, over 50 podcast interviews. Now it's close to 250 podcast interviews, media interviews, TV show interviews that I have booked myself on, not paying a publicist to do it. I have no issue with a publicist, but most of us do not have the $2,000 to $5,000 per month to pay somebody to get us in these placements. And so we need to be able to have the skills and the knowledge of what needs to transpire to allow us those opportunities so that we're able to be good stewards of our funds and do the things that we can do ourselves and outsource those things that are just too difficult. There are so many different ways that you can get on some of these opportunities, but I want you to not limit what the opportunities look like. Even gigantic opportunities like getting on the Dr. Oz show as a Christian is something that you would not think would be possible that you could do yourself. But that opportunity came simply from an email that was sent. There wasn't any magical numbers that I had to figure out who to contact. It was a simple email sent after researching on their website to get that opportunity. So we're going to take a look at those things. I want us to begin with, why do we even need to, as a person of faith, be in secular and faith-based media? Well, I think too often when we think about media, we sometimes think of it as self-promotion. I'm getting on there, I'm talking about my book, I'm talking about whatever it is that I'm talking about. And so it's me, 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 me. But if you wrote a book that is anything remotely related to Jesus, if you wrote a book that talks about his faithfulness, if you wrote a book that talks about hope, healing, restoration, redemption, if you wrote a book from the heart position of one who is with Christ, your book is not about self-promotion. Your book is about promoting the gospel, promoting the character of God, promoting what he is doing in the earth. And so when you look at any type of media as an opportunity to cast the net wider, to share with a larger number of people the reality of what you wrote in your book, marketing and getting in media is not about self-promotion. It's about inspiring other people to draw closer to him. And so when we look at what you're going to share, whether you're a fiction author or a nonfiction author, we have to begin by thinking about what are the areas of your life, what are the parts of your ministry that are core to what you talk about. You can pitch specific books. You can pitch your overall ministry goals and vision. You can pitch anything, but you have to be clear about what you're pitching. And so some questions to think about are, what is the message God has placed in your heart to share? What is that thing that you would talk about even if there was just one person listening to the podcast? It's passionate, it's burning inside of you, and you don't have to overly prepare to be able to talk about that thing. It flows from a place of fullness because it is a part of your author brand. When we talk about branding, I am not talking about how cute your website is. I'm not talking about what colors you pick, what fonts you chose. Those things are fantastic. Go for it. What I'm talking about, what is the imprint on your heart from heaven? What is the part of God's heart that he is so impressed in you that it flows through every single thing you do? That is your true author branding. That is what has to come through in every book. That is what has to come through in your website when people go to it. That is what has to come through in your interviews. And so once you identify what that is, that core message that you love to talk about, it doesn't limit you. It actually just puts some infrastructure around what you're building. And so I'll give you an example in my own life. I talk about a lot of different things. As Norma just mentioned, I have a lot of different books on all kinds of topics. So everything from racial reconciliation to rest and being more well rested and sleeping, to healing from emotional wounds, to being set free from limiting mindset limitations. I mean, lots of different topics. But the overarching theme of all of those is healing. The author brand that is so impressed on my heart, the characteristic of God that I want to share with the world is that God is a healer, that he can heal racial wounds, that he can heal emotional wounds, that he can heal mental wounds, and he can even heal your exhausted body, soul, and spirit. That is the core author brand. So the author brand gives structure to what I do, but it doesn't limit what I do, because within the author brand, I can talk about healing on any level that I choose and I'm still in brand. And so when you start identifying what your author brand is, you then have to see who is the person that needs to hear about what it is you're talking about. That's going to dictate how you outreach. That's going to dictate which podcast you pitch. That's going to dictate which TV shows make the most sense for your author brand. And then you're also going to want to know and get kind of solidified in your heart the passion to share the message. One of the things that helped me the most when I first started this journey, I was extraordinarily introverted. I didn't want to be on any kind of stage, spotlight, interview, podcast, anything, radio. I didn't care. I didn't want to be on anything, whether visible or just audio. I wanted to write that book and let God do whatever God was going to do. Well, what I realized is you have to be in partnership with God to write a book. You also have to be in partnership with God to promote a book. It's not a thing where you get to turn the reins over all of a sudden. There's a level of surrender, but there's still work you need to do, because part of that work is growing your ability to trust him with the work of your hand. And so something that one of my mentors helped me to really hone down on why share the message is she asked me this question: what happens if that person that you wrote the book for, someone mentioned they're reading Sacred Rest. When I wrote Sacred Rest, the thought I had in mind the whole time I was writing it is, some woman is just as desperate for a moment to breathe as I was when I first started that journey. And then my mentor asked, what happens if she never hears the message? Are you willing to leave her in that position, knowing that you have an answer? See, it's not self-promotion when you share. It's actually selfish when you don't. And so we have to get beyond our own fears about getting out there, about getting it wrong, about what if the interview is not great? What if I forget my 5 points and my 2 things I want to check off the list? What if God shows up in the middle of it? What if he allows you to be that person that bridges the gap between the pain and the recovery? So next, we then have to see, what does the media want? You've got the passion, you've got the heart, you're ready to go. What is it that they want? How do you get them to say yes? And so the media is looking for really one thing. They're looking for relevance. They want to know that this message you're going to share meets a need or fulfills a pain point that their audience has. If you can hit on a pain point that you can alleviate, or if you can inspire a dream that the audience already has, or if you can make the audience think differently about a topic that they're struggling with, those will get the yes, because they want new ideas. They want innovation, creativity, ways of looking at things and approaching things that are different than how it's always been done. So where do we pitch? Well, you can pitch anywhere you want, but the 3 main areas that I recommend are podcast, radio, and TV. And here's why. All excuses fly out the window with these 3. You can do TV from your Zoom. Every one of you is on Zoom, so I know you know how to use it, so there's no excuses. You can do radio from Zoom, or even from your phone, as well as podcasts from Zoom and from your phone. So it's not like you need a lot of extra stuff. You don't have to hop a plane to go do all of these things. They can be done from the comfort of your home, fit into your day. You just have to allow yourself that 30 minutes, that hour, whatever it is, to show up for the opportunity. And so when you're looking at it, there's so many different ways to determine where to pitch. I do author book launches at times, and particularly for friends and people whose works I really love, and they're needing that support team. I love being cheerleaders for people. So I do book launches for them. I run their book launch. I put the stuff together. I do all the things. And one of the things that I love doing during one of the weeks is I ask the book launch participants to share what podcasts they listen to, what Christian TV or radio programs that they frequently enjoy. And so with doing this, you basically get a list of places where you can pitch. Now you may be thinking, well, that's great. I have a list. I know what shows I would love to be on. How do I get in touch with the right person? It's a lot simpler than you think. I'll give a couple of examples. Most of those places have websites and they have a contact me page. Even if they don't specifically have an email that you can do a formal pitch to, they often have a block where you can input information. Copy, paste the pitch directly into that contact me page. Another way that you can do that is if they have an email list, sign up to their email list. And you know what? That email that comes to you, you can reply back to with your pitch. Most of the time, that is all it takes to get to the correct person. It's a little bit of effort that has the ability to get you on some much larger platforms so that you can share what God's placed in your heart with a larger group of people. So how do we create that pitch? What do we put in it? What do we say? Well, there's a couple of different things. And the number one thing is you want the subject line to give a taste. It's almost like if you've ever watched the news and they say, coming in our next segment, we have blah, 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 this person doing this thing. And it's the little teaser. It's that little thing that makes you come back after you grab your coffee to hear that person. That's what you want your subject line to do. You want them to have a hint of what your podcast interview, your segment of a TV show or radio show, what's the blurb they're going to give, that little teaser that makes people lean in, listen, and follow through. Next, you're going to want to share that you're clear about who it is you serve and what problem, what idea, what concept are you bringing that can help them. Every podcast, radio, or TV show you plan on pitching, you should have listened to at least once. This is why you want no surprises. You don't want to send a pitch saying, hey, I'd love to be on your show. And it's a podcast that's a solo podcast. The person doesn't even interview people. Well, you would know that if you listen to a few of them, because you'd hear nobody's getting interviewed. Or you don't want to pitch someone and the way you pitch them is not in alignment with how they do their podcast. For example, my podcast is called I Choose My Best Life. Every single show episode starts with choose. Choose joy. Choose redemption. Choose peace. Choose to be free. Every single episode for the past 5 years, hundreds of them. So if someone pitches me and their subject line says, choose something, brownie points, if it's choose something I've never done before in hundreds of episodes, I'm going to pay attention because that tells me that person has investigated the podcast. They've listened. They have some clue. And then once I'm on the inside and I'm looking at this phase 2, and I hear them say things like, I share with women who are facing life changes, and I'm going to help them with this particular problem. I'm going to cover these 2 to 3 things specifically during the podcast. And then they tell me I wrote this book and this book goes more in depth. I'm already invested at this point. They've got me with the subject line. They've shown me they know who it is my audience is. And then they've given me some of the key points that they would actually talk about. And those key points shouldn't just be, I wrote this book because. That's great. We'll hit that question. We'll go over what your website is. We'll talk about how great your book is. I don't care to just spend the hour talking about how great your book is. I need content that is relevant and life-changing to the people who are listening. That is what every producer of every TV, radio, or podcast is looking for. Relevant information. So in your pitch, show that you understand that. Your pitch should not be a book report where it tells me all the stuff that's in your book. It should be written where you have specific points you're going to cover, and how they're going to help the audience. Mention the book, because that gives validity to your expertise. That gives validity to your research, your experience, your in-depthness. And I know some of you are probably fiction writers and you're thinking, how do I do that? Well, within your fiction book, there's probably some life themes. Is someone in your fiction book disabled? The conversation could be based around that, because obviously it's something that's tugged at your heart, because why did you put it in the book? Maybe within your fiction book, someone is dealing with grief. Base your conversation around that. What did you research for that fiction book? What emotions did you tap into that you had to bring to the forefront so the reader could get into that position with you and do some self-reflection evaluation? Go deeper into that. Tell some of the story without giving all the juicy parts away, right? But then take them into a deeper conversation around the topics of the story. Next, after you sent off your pitch and you got it all wrapped up and you got a yes, the thing you don't want is to start feeling overwhelmed. I am not for overwhelm. I'm for simplifying things so that they're systematic, and so that you have a ebb and flow and rhythm to how you do things. And so have a template for your pitch that you can tweak to specify it for each podcast, radio, or TV show you pitch, so that you only have to change maybe 20% of the pitch to individualize it so that it resonates with the producer. And then be prepared for the yes. The easiest way I found to be prepared for the yes is to have an online media kit. Now, this online media kit it could be in a Google Drive, it could be in a Dropbox folder. I do mine on my website, and it's just a link on my website that I can send after I get the yes that says, here's everything you need for our upcoming interview, all in one place. It has your bio that they can read. It has your headshots. It has your social media links so that they can refer to you and pull you into the conversation online. It has prior media so that they can see how you interview. And it has suggested questions. One thing you don't want to do, show up for any interview without having sent some suggested questions. Because as the author, you know the direction that you want to speak into. You know the end result of what you want your conversation to come to. The producer likely does not. And so if you leave the questions completely open to them, you may end up at a destination you did not anticipate. You may end up having a conversation about something you actually weren't prepared to talk about. So if you send suggested questions, it gives some structure to the conversation. Now, it doesn't mean that they're not going to ask you something off the cuff. I do this. I always require suggested questions, 7 to 10, but I always also ask questions that are not listed. Or I take questions and I move them around and mix them up and make it more interesting. But at least you have the structure there so that you have some prepared answers in your head of what the conversation will be about. And then the last thing that is so important when you get any type of media interviews, if you do any kind of radio or TV or podcast, the show, it's great that you got on. It's great that people got blessed. You've expanded your reach, but you haven't expanded your platform yet until you do the last thing. And that is to make an offer. You have to get the people who heard you on that show off of the show and on to your personal platform. Now, the simplest way I've found to do that is by offering something free that is of value to the listener, and that they have to give you their email address to receive. So most of you are familiar with the term lead magnet. However, if you're not, let me share what a lead magnet is. It is simply a freebie behind an email lock wall. So it's not go to my email and get my free download, and they just hit a button and go to the email, go to the website, and the download pops up in their browser. That's not a lead magnet because it did not capture their email address. It has to be on the other side of an email lock wall. So in order to get that freebie, they have to provide their email. What this does is it grows your email list. Email right now is the #1 platform building aspect that publishers are looking at. Social media, fantastic. Get those likes, get people following you, all of that stuff. However, you can have 1,000 followers or 10,000 followers on Facebook or Instagram. Only a fraction of those people actually see your post, and you have no way of controlling how you even reintroduce up the post without posting it again, and you're likely going to get the same number of people seeing it. However, with your email, not only do you have specifics on how many people opened up your email, you can send to the unopens so that you have even a larger number of people who have received it and responded. Authors without a lead magnet, authors who don't do the email captures and build their email list, they struggle to stay connected with their readers. They have to do more and more and more and more podcasts and more interviews and more social media because they don't have a quick way for direct access. They don't see a return on their investment with interviews because after that one interview, if the person doesn't buy your book right that very moment, they're probably not going to go back to it. However, if they signed up and got your freebie, now you get a chance to continue the conversation with them. You get the chance to continue offering your books, your products, your services, whatever you have. So you want to convert those interview opportunities into platform growth and book sale opportunities through the use of a lead magnet. So it's highly desirable free offer. It's not just any old thing. It needs to be something that they want. So they have to want it bad enough to put their email in there because they know that you're going to be sending them emails after they put it in there. So it needs to be something that talks to the same pain point, inspires the same dream, or some way encourages them in a way that they need that extra bit of support. You also want to make sure that following that lead magnet, you have some type of nurture sequence so that they don't just get the lead magnet and then they don't hear from you for 4 months. You want to have some specific emails that you already have placed into your system so that new subscribers get an email maybe once a week, maybe once a month, but there's some regularity so that you stay at the front and center of their mind on whatever that topic is. Now, I will add this. It is rude to get someone's email and not talk to them anymore. If some of you may be thinking, oh, I have an email list, I haven't written anything to them in like 4 months. Well, repent, because that's rude. They trusted you with that email. They trusted you to feed them. I love that one to me is one of the saddest and most joy-filled scriptures in the Bible, where Jesus is telling Peter, do you love me? And he goes, of course, Lord, I love you. And he goes, feed my sheep. And do you love me? Of course, Lord, feed my sheep. And then a third time, do you love me? And by now he's exacerbated. He's like, yes. and he goes, Jesus says, feed my sheep. Your email is an opportunity to feed the sheep. It's called a nurture sequence for a reason. It's an opportunity to share love. Yes, you're going to send out the occasional post that talks about different stuff. Yes, you're going to send out things that are ads where you're asking them to buy stuff. You're going to do more than just the blogs or just the podcast or just whatever it is that you're nurturing them with. But there should be times of nurturing where you are reconnecting, keeping the relationship, building up that community within the email. And it's great if you can align some of that with what was talked about in your book. But more importantly, align it with your author brand. That takes the limits off. You don't have to just focus it specifically with one book. You shouldn't have an email list for every book that you had. It should be an email list built around your author brand, and your author brand allows you to write whatever books it is God puts in your heart to do. So, key features of an effective lead magnet. First, they focus on a felt need. And so it should be specific and targeted to address a specific need, desire, or problem that your audience is facing. So, what are some ideas of ways that you could create a lead magnet? My favorite one is our quizzes. That is the one that has grown my email list the most, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Other ways nonfiction authors can create lead magnets include checklists, include a webinar where you're doing a mini training. It can include 15-minute coaching sessions. That's one that's unique, because I think a lot of times we think, I don't know how, I don't know what I would offer somebody. Can you talk to someone? If you're going on a podcast that's a rather small, podcast, and you're thinking, I just don't know how many people I can reach. This issue that I'm talking about is so specific and it's so unique, and there's only so many people. How about offering a 15-minute coaching session for those who sign up? And so you can block off a day, 2 days maybe, where you do these little 15-minute talks with people, and you just give them a moment to share their heart. Let me tell you that's when you build a list of people who are that 100 true fans. That's a great place to start, to build that first 100 true fans. There's a study that says if you have 100 true fans, the people who believe in you, believe in your work, who want to promote and propel the message inside of you further, they are a street team, a launch team that cannot be stopped. Think of a mini course. Maybe taking a training you've already done or something you've already presented, chop it up into 5-minute little mini bits, and then put it in some type of platform like Teachable and have a mini course that's your lead magnet. Or even building an exclusive online community like a Facebook group or some other way that people can stay connected and have opportunities to collaborate and to share their journeys and to pray together. Now, fiction authors, you are not off the hook either. There are lead magnets that are great for fiction authors as well. One of my favorite ones is action guides. One of my fiction author friends, she is a children's fiction author, and so she wrote a book about science stuff, like about orcas and whales and how all of the kind of the mystery of all of that and kind of the beauty of that particular animal. And, the question then arose, well, what kind of lead magnet can I do with that? What kind of podcast interview can I have around that? Because I need to get my message out there too, that God's creation is lovely. Well, because our book was written for children, we have to evaluate who should the lead magnet be for, because children can't buy books. 5-year-olds don't have a credit card. So we need to think, who is the person that is actually responsible for the transaction that would occur that would lead to a book sale? Well, parents and grandparents, right? So the pitch was out to parenting podcasts, grandparenting podcasts, anything that was related to people who take care of kids, teaching podcast. And the topic specifically was related to Earth Day, re-enjoying Earth and the mystery of nature. The lead magnet, an action guide. An action guide so that parents and grandparents and teachers could have a conversation with a 5-year-old or whatever age the child may happen to be about the importance of the earth, the importance of nature. So it had questions, it had coloring pages, it had fun facts that I bet you didn't know that kids would love. It had kitty jokes. It had all these things in a little PDF that was like 10 pages max, considering some of them were coloring pages and mazes and these different kind of things. Created one time becomes a lead magnet that not only allowed her to get a lot of podcasts, radio, and TV interviews during that Earth Day period and beyond, but it also helped her sell thousands of copies of books, because If the lead magnet was that good, how much better could the book be? The book and the lead magnet almost accompanied each other. So you're having the conversation, you have the conversation prompts, and then you've got this book that goes deeper. Video series can do the same things. If you're writing a fiction book about something that where you even mention a recipe or a food or something of that nature, you can tuck it in there as a lead magnet. Hey, get my grandma's famous molasses cake recipe. I talked about that in our book, Colorful Connections. So get that so that you can now experience the same aroma that filled the house that I'm talking about in the book. Multiple different ways that you can offer a freebie that then brings over the person into your email list. The freebie should be related to your book if you're trying to sell books, because it allows you to have some flexibility there. So yes, that does mean you will likely have multiple freebies. My freebies for Sacred Rest are not the freebies that we had for Colorful Connections. They're completely different. And that helps because then you can be specific with them. Now, I want to take a look at the freebie that I use that I found the greatest success with. So you can get an example of how to use a freebie, what it can look like, how to incorporate it within all the things you do so that you build up your email list, increase your platform growth a lot faster. I personally use a quiz with the book Sacred Rest. My background is in internal medicine as a physician. I'm a work-life integration researcher. I spent a lot of time doing nerdy scientific stuff. And so it was very easy for me to kind of think in the mindset of, I want people to be able to self-diagnose to get to a place of wholeness and healing as it relates to exhaustion and fatigue. So the lead magnet was reader focused. It was not about me. It was all about them. I need you to figure out what your personal rest deficits are. I'm going to give you the framework, the structure. I'm going to put it together. You have to step into the opportunity. You then want to make it easy for the person to assess online. For myself, I had this going through my website. Well, my website, if I just gave them the website URL, it would have been iChooseMyBestLife.com/rest-quiz-quiz4, because we went through a couple iterations before we got it right. And so I would have to have said that on every radio, TV, podcast show. And what do you want to bet that most people would have forgot the 4 or forgot the dash before the 4? Nobody would have got to the quiz. And so to simplify it, we had a redirect that was just the words restquiz.com. And so when I talked about it on any of the media, all I had to say was go to restquiz.com and take our free assessment and find out which of the 7 types of rest you're deficient in. For you, you may be thinking, well, I can make it just my name.com/quiz, but what if your name's hard to spell? You're now requiring the person to not only remember your name, but what came after your name to get to it. So in some cases, having a custom URL can be beneficial because you can make it so simple. It can even be the title of the book, book.com. You don't have to create an entire new website. You just redirect when someone types in that URL, it takes them over to the place on your website where that lead magnet is held. And then finally, you want to make sure it is connected to your email platform, because that is the key to growing out your email list. They have to provide that email before they get whatever the thing is. Now let's take a look before we finish at some places where you can share this. This is just showing an example of audience growth that can occur as you build out and use an effective lead magnet. This was a 1-month period. You can see where the slide's from a couple of years ago. A 1-month period where over 2,000 people joined my email list during that time, just off of that one quiz email. And then you want to make sure that the call to action in the lead magnet. This is the final piece. The call to action is, I'll use my own example. After they get the results, the email that has whatever it is that they signed up for, on that same email, have a picture of your book. Have a picture of your book and have it hyperlinked to your Amazon or Barnes and Nobles or christianbook.com, wherever you want to send people to. Have it hyperlinked so that after they've gone through your lead magnet, even if it's a PDF, after they've gone through your PDF, have at the last page of the PDF a gigantic picture of your book and a purchase now, a call to action that says, hey, there's more. Don't leave them after the lead magnet having to go back and figure out what else you got. Put it on a platter for them. Create the table, serve it up so that they can automatically get to whatever the next thing is. You want to integrate that tribe from whatever the media opportunity is over into your tribe so that you're not leaving money or opportunity or even experience to expand the kingdom on the table. You want to make sure that you're allowing them to continue the conversation with you beyond just what they heard during that interview. So let's take a look. Where can you place your lead magnet? This is my website. I have 2 lead magnets that come up on the website. You can see the rest quiz shows up at the top. Take the quiz. And then I have another little happiness in your inbox, which basically is a lead magnet that gets them automatically signed up to get an email that has like a mini devotional. Other places to put your lead magnet. If you have an Amazon author page, in your bio, you can put your lead magnet, information about it. Notice I put mine at the very top. Most of the people who come to my Amazon author page are coming there for my for the book Sacred Rest. And so I put that as the primary lead magnet that I drive them to. Inside of your book, you can put your lead magnet. Notice the inside of this particular Kindle book, right under endorsement, it says, my free gift to you. Now, what's awesome about this? On Amazon, you know, like the first 10 pages of most books are in that look before you buy section. So even before the person buys the book, if they're sitting on the fence, this my free gift to you prompt will be visible to them. It can have a QR code so that they can just quickly scan it and go to it and get the lead magnet. Or it could have a link like that custom URL we were talking about. And then also look at the very bottom, after the conclusion, after they've read the entire book, this author put the my free gift to you, the lead magnet, in it again. And so if you have a Kindle book, if you're self-published, you can go in and do this yourself and stick them in there so that when people read your book, or even if they're just investigating your book, you can begin building out your platform just with placing your lead magnet in these areas. If you have an interview that you do that's online, where like a blog post or a guest post, insert your lead magnets there. So other places include your email signature box, bio sections on guest posts and blog podcast or blog posts and online articles. You can put them on your bookmarks and promotional materials if you go to any of these conferences like NRB or Christian Broadcasting. You can put it in your social media profile bios. If you're a speaker, you can share it from the stage. I oftentimes, if I'm asked to speak related to rest, recovery, or anything like that, I mentioned the quiz there. You can include it also during and you should include it at the end of every media opportunity you have. Every single one of them, some aspect of sharing how they can get reconnected back with you. So that's what I have for you today. So I'm going to open it up for questions. If you have a personal question you want to send me, feel free to shoot me an email. I do have author support linked on my website that you're welcome to do. Is ichoosemybestlife.com/author support, just to be able to stay connected with some of the things that I do with authors there. All right, so I will open it back up to whoever leads questions.
Wow, Saundra, what a wealth of information. And this is one that will definitely get some replays.
Sure.
I know for me.
Yes, I took lots of notes.
Thank you.
I want to go back to it too. So if you want, just come on. We have a few minutes left to ask questions. We do have a couple questions in the chat, but please feel free to come on. If we put you in writer's chat jail, let us know so we can get you back out again. And I am going back, and that way you can ask your questions yourself. Everybody loved what is the imprint on your heart from heaven. I had never heard it
Yes.
said quite like that before. And I know I wrote it down immediately, and I think a lot of other people did too. That just makes it such a different way of looking at what
One of
our message is.
One of the questions I saw was, what platform do you use to create your quizzes?
Well, there's lots of them out there. I have a WordPress website. And so WordPress has a plugin that's called Quiz and Survey Maker, I believe is the name of the actual plugin, but it's a WordPress plugin that you basically create the quiz in. There are some, I've had people do it through just SurveyMonkey to do their quiz through there. I mean, there's a lots of different ways of doing a quiz, but I wanted to keep it within the same platform that I use my website on.
So we should if they don't use WordPress, they should probably check with whatever they use to host their website to see if
Yes,
it's included.
that's true. Or just honestly, if you type in Google quiz maker, you will get 15 different opportunities, because there's lots of different ones out there right now that will create a quiz for you. Depends on what you want your quiz to look like. Like there are quizzes where, like mine is a bullet quiz. You go down and you click the bullet that defines you, describes you. There are quizzes where every one of them is like every new page of the screen is a separate question. So lots of different ways that you can put a quiz together.
Thank you.
Another question was, do you ever include the answers to the questions when you mail questions to people that will be interviewing you? Do you also include the answers in those questions?
I do not. Now, when I'm training authors with doing their own media, I recommend that whatever question you write out, that you write out your answer, just so that you have thought through what you're going to say. And you can have, especially because most radio and podcasts rather, interviews are done in Zoom nowadays. You can have, and even if it's done in something like some of these other ones that are done online, you can have your Word document open in front of on your computer, even as you're doing the interview. You can have it printed, in front of you. I actually recommend that you don't print it, but just have it open on the screen, because you can hear papers rattle when you have your mic on. And so they can, that's distracting to the interview. So if you have it on the screen, it's very easy to scroll if you forget what your answer was. This is particularly helpful if whatever you're talking about has specific like points that you must make, or if it has specific scriptures that you are prone to forget. Like, is it, verse 4, chapters this, if you have it already in front of you, it takes some of those fears away, so that you come into the interview prepared, but you also are allowing some flexibility for Holy Spirit to move. I don't want your answers so perfected that you move God straight out of the conversation.
I find too, when I've done like radio interviews, that it's amazing how quickly the time goes by. And, and I've done that. Like I've had I have used papers. I'm sorry to say I've had them, or, I've had a screen open, but it's amazing how, you know your book, and you know it better than you think you do. And even a book that maybe I was interviewed for that I hadn't read in a while, I've gone through it, I sort of skimmed through it. And it's amazing how calm you can be. I mean, it always amazes me when it's all done that I was calm and composed and I answered every question, without stumbling over it too much. And the interviewers can be great with that too, how they handle the interview too. They want you to feel at home, so they're going to do their best to make
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Any interviewer wants a great interview. I mean, they want people to feel as if they're just sitting in a conversation, and they want it to flow naturally. They want it to be relaxed. They want a level of comfort that typically only comes when people know each other, but we're trying to recreate it like in a moment with a stranger. And so having those questions for the interviewer helps me to make sure that I am highlighting you in the way you want it to be highlighted. So it's a form of respect to say, hey, help me help you. help me help you shine in the way that you want to shine. And then as the interviewer, like I said, I tell people, if you have to write it out, but don't read me your answer. Write it out just so that you have wrapped your mind around what you want to say. And then just say it when we get into the moment. It's not a speech. I don't want it perfected. If you stutter over the words, hey, we got engineers that can take out most of that stuff and piece it all together. But just let it flow from you naturally, because those are the conversations people enjoy listening to.
Oh, I so agree. Okay, we also about making short or custom URLs. People had questions about that. And Melissa, you talked about a plugin that you have. Can you talk a little bit about it?
Oh, on WordPress.org, they have a plugin called Pretty Links that will allow you to custom make those links that are more memorable, where you might be taken on whatever platform you've created that link to, something that's bulky and hard to remember, then you can replace it and it will redirect. So you can share that nicer link that's more memorable for people.
Yeah. And sometimes I, for myself, sometimes I just actually go buy a new URL. Like I go in what's it called? GoDaddy, I think it's the name of it. I go directly in there and buy a completely new URL if it's something that I am like passionate about. And I'm like, I think this is one I want to keep. Sometimes I even do that. So you can do bit.ly.com. That's another one. However, then the person has to remember bit.ly and whatever it is after it. So that's not my favorite, but that is one that you can do if you are going to create a QR code. Like if you're doing the lead magnet, let's say on a what's it called? Like a rack card at a conference that you're presenting at or something like that. Those are other ways you can do it as well.
Catherine says she's not allowed in GoDaddy.
You sound like me. You got a collection of URLs, yeah.
Yeah, I use Bitly for print things, but I think it is sort of cumbersome to have to say it. And I get confused because it's like the IT period.
Right.
I always have to think about it. So I agree, it's probably not the best, but if you're doing print and you need something short rather than your whole, it can be helpful that way. Did I miss any questions? Anyone else see any comments that we should be highlighting?
You didn't miss it because somebody did comment on it, but I am going to make sure everybody knows before you send any of those links to your podcaster or whatever, make sure they work first.
That's true.
I've missed that before.
Oh, great advice. Learn from experience, huh, Kathy? Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Make sure they work. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Bye, Bitsy. Anybody else that's here or any other questions before we wrap up?
It's just a lot of information to process, really good information. There's things on that you were saying that I, just as fast as I could trying to write things down. I'm a ferocious note taker anyway, but this was just powerful. And I think whether it's like you said in your talk, fiction or nonfiction, it works. And I think even the question I have for you is, can this work with compilation work?
I believe it can, because a compilation has to be around a topic. So, one of my books is a compilation. Actually, it's right here. The She Writes for Him book, okay. Stories of Resilient Faith. So all of our stories are completely different, but all of them are based around the topic of resilient faith. And so the thing with that is, with compilations, it's really cool if the interviewer is able to interview more than one person. You can do it one-on-one. You can always pitch one-on-one, which is fine because you're basically representing the overall theme and topic of the book. So that's great. But if you can have you and another person there, you can both offer two different gifts, because you're likely your author brand is not exactly what that other person's author brand is. You just both meet around the topic of whatever that is. Carol Kent's author brand is built around restoration with her relationship with her son. Mine is built around healing. So different topics, different lead magnets, all coming together for God's glory, really, for the topic of resilient faith.
Okay, good. And does that work also if you're not the one that compiled it? Like, for example, I'm in several compilation devotionals, but I wasn't the one that put it together.
Well, I didn't put this together. Somebody else was the managing editor. And so, because the managing editor can obviously do interviews as well and talk about it for why they created the book and why that topic is important. But every person in the book has to have a reason why they wrote what they wrote in the book.
Gotcha.
And so, yes, absolutely.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, it's time to wrap up, but we do invite you, of course, to stay around for the after party. Melissa, real quick, you want to tell us about next week?
Next week, we're going to have Lori Roloveld come to talk with us about the benefits of having a writing coach. So that'll be fun to learn about. I'm sure we have a lot of people who are very interested in that. Mm-hmm. And join us next time.
Thank you. And for those of you watching the replay, I just want to remind you that we're recording about every Tuesday morning at 11 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock Central, and then you can figure out your time zone from there. And we'd love to have you join us, and also to check out our Writers Chat members Facebook page and group. You can find all the videos. We put the recordings there. They're on YouTube, and then they're listed in those on that Facebook page and Facebook group, and tons of topics. So a lot of writerly things to find there. Until next week, everybody, please stay around for the after party. Until next week, we'll see you then. Bye-bye.